What's up, everybody? Mike Patterson here, back for another episode of Solar Pro Saturday. At Power World last weekend, I got lots and lots of questions about backup options and been seeing even more of them on our Facebook pages. So we're going to cover that this weekend. Hope you enjoy it. So today we're going to cover a couple things. Why would a customer want backup? And then we're going to go in order of the cost from portable generators, standby generators, and then batteries, which is the thing we're most interested in. Going to cover some special circumstances, and then the very basics of battery sizing. We'll have a full video on that following. So first and foremost, why would you want to invest in battery backup? Why is that a good option for your customer? Why are they asking about it? I think this news headline here says it all. Power outages are climbing through the roof. My own house, my batteries last year caught more than 40 outages. That's crazy. So we know outages are increasing nationwide, and at the same time, more and more essential appliances run on electricity. Think of all the new EVs you're seeing out there. The grid's not getting any stronger, but the demand is going up. That's just going to cause more outages, and the outages are going to be more painful. You can even take advantage of peak shifting, not really a backup function, but if you have batteries in certain markets, that can be helpful. And then as the cost of everything like food is increasing, people are realizing it's going to be a whole lot more expensive to replace spoiled foods when their refrigerator's out for a day or two. And finally, you've got just a general distrust growing, distrust of the utilities, distrust of the government, whatever it is. And people with a desire to be prepared for future disasters, natural, man-made, whatever it might be. You want an example of this, just look at Texas, the blackouts of last year. And now, I'm being on the verge of blackouts again. So what kind of options do we have? Starting at the cheapest, we've got our portable generators. Obviously, the lowest cost option, these range from a couple $100 to a couple thousand. Typically, gasoline, diesel, or propane fueled, sometimes even a flex fuel where you can mix. And they back up loads in the most simple fashion by running extension cords. Or you can have certain breakers that you back up with a manual transfer switch and a twist lock connector. So we're going to go over some pros and cons. The pros, obviously, they're cheap, they're inexpensive, they're portable. You can use them if you're camping, you can use them other places. Sometimes flex fuel, which gives you some flexibility. If you can't find gas, well, maybe you have propane and vice versa. And they can be run in parallel. So you can take two relatively inexpensive generators and effectively double the power output. Long list of cons here. That's probably why they're so cheap. But first and foremost is fuel storage concerns. How long can you keep gasoline or diesel before it spoils? Propane you can keep for a while, but you have a much lower fuel density. You'll blow through your tanks quickly. You actually get less power out of the generators when you're running it on propane. So do you have a place that you can keep that fuel, or are you using that fuel for other things, or is it going to just sit there and go bad? They also require maintenance, just like any engine, anything with moving parts. There's maintenance, there's fluids you need to change, spark plugs, belts, you name it. And if you're not running them periodically, they're going to go bad. How could you trust it? Would you trust your car if it sat for 2 years before you really needed it? And going beyond that, think about it. Your power outage comes typically with a disaster, at least the ones that people are buying these things for. Are you going to be able to find gas, find propane, find diesel after a disaster? Here in Florida, we can barely find gas, a week before they say a hurricane's going to hit us, let alone 2 days after. And then being that they're smaller, you've got less backup capability, and they are typically very noisy. Want to put a warning out here. This comes from, being a former firefighter. We saw this a lot, unfortunately. You must operate these in an area with good ventilation away from enclosed and occupied structures. Do not operate these in a garage. People in your house will die. Every year, 70 people die from portable generators. They put out a lot of carbon monoxide. They don't burn the gasoline or whatever fuel it is very clean. You can't smell it. You just go to sleep and never wake up. It's a tragedy. So next up on our list, we go to standby generators. These cost more than portables, less than batteries. They do require professional installation. That should at least mean that you have less CO risk because they're positioned somewhere where you should get good ventilation. Typically, these are going to be natural gas, propane, or diesel. On the residential side, it's typically natural gas or propane. But unless you have a gas line, you need storage tanks, which is a major limiting factor here. How much fuel can you store? They do have a higher power output. Most typically we'll see 20s like you see in the picture, or 22 kW batteries or generators, I'm sorry, which, that can get you a fairly easy whole home backup sometimes. And they can be automatically engaged, at least the better higher end ones can. So you have an outage, there might be a couple second delay, and they kick up, fire up, and they kick in and on and off automatically through an automatic transfer switch. So pros here, this is probably your cheapest full home backup, cheapest upfront at least. Like I said, they can be automatic. If you have natural gas, there's potentially an uninterrupted fuel supply. That at least used to be the way of thinking. I think the blackouts in Texas last year, again, opened a lot of people's eyes. As more and more power plants, industries, you name it, are reliant on natural gas, the supply can be prioritized and shifted. And a lot of people were left without gas, or left with multi-$1,000 natural gas bills after that blackout. And like I said, they do cost less upfront than the batteries. In terms of cons, we already talked a little bit about fuel storage concerns. How big of a tank can you realistically put by your house? Is it going to be a buried propane tank? Those can get expensive. Is it going to be above ground? Is it going to be a diesel tank? And was the tank full when the outage occurred? Everyone likes to think, okay, I have this propane tank is going to give me 4 or 5 days of backup. That's assuming you had a heads up and were able to fill your tank before the storm or whatever it is hit. If you're running off a propane tank that your house also runs on, there's a good chance you're not full in the beginning of this. Are you going to be able to get fuel in the disaster? Whichever fuel it is, typically after a disaster, it's going to be really tough, inexpensive to find. And if you are on natural gas, is the supply interrupted? If it is, you have no fuel. It's not going to run. It's a nice expensive paperweight. Just like the portables that you require periodic maintenance, these are essentially car motors. And you should run it monthly or biweekly, even depending on where you are. Down here with salty air, high humidity, you want to run them a little more frequently. But again, as you're running them, now you're depleting your propane tank a little bit. So finally, the one that we're all here for, the solar with batteries. These cost the most upfront per kilowatt of backup power. Benefit here, though, they keep your solar online and producing in an outage. This is the only option here that will keep your panels producing. They're the only ones that actually forms a microgrid, which overrides that rapid shutdown that all the solar systems are required to have. Many, or actually most of these, have zero moving parts, including the two we're going to discuss here, the SolarEdge and Enphase batteries. They require no maintenance, they have no fuel. And if you buy it and install it with your solar, you can qualify for the investment tax credit, help pay for it, and solar financing rates, which tend to be much, much lower than you're going to get on your general home improvement loans that would pay for a generator. So with the pros, biggest one here is no fuel requirements. You don't have to worry about getting fuel ahead of time, storing fuel, refueling, anything like that. The sun is your fuel. Often no moving parts. That means less things to go bad. I say nearly silent because a couple batteries do have cooling fans, particularly Tesla Powerwalls. Very, very quiet, much quieter than any generator, but not completely silent. They can be self-sustaining, and that's the goal oftentimes. If you size it properly and use it properly, and you put a sufficiently sized solar array with it, you can actually set up a backup situation where the sun is going to be able to completely recharge the battery every day, and you just get that limitless charge-discharge cycle. And like I said, they do qualify for the ITC. The solar financing rates, there's times, especially people with higher electric bills or areas with higher electric rates, that we can put in a solar and battery system for very close, and sometimes even about the same as what they've been previously spending on their electricity. So maybe they're not getting savings, but they're spending close to or the same, and now they have energy security. Certainly it's less of a combined payment than paying their existing electric bill and buying a generator. There are some cons here. They do cost a lot up front. There's no, that's the elephant in the room. There's no avoiding that. Also, the current lithium-ion technology, these are effectively the same as car batteries. Most of them are warranted to retain about 70% of their capacity by year 10. In real world, that means you should certainly be above that. Nobody warranties the expected capacity because they'd be replacing way too many of them. And on that note, on the warranties, the batteries themselves don't typically fail. It tends to be the accessory component. So if they have integrated inverters, something like that, really after that 10-year mark, the biggest limitation is going to be that you've lost some capacity and maybe you just have to add another battery or a smaller battery to boost you back up. Also some large backups, again, down here in Florida. I mean, I just talked to someone the other day with 5 air conditioners. If they wanted a whole home backup, that's a lot of batteries. So what about some special circumstances? These are where a lot of the questions came in. First and foremost, everyone wants to know about, well, can I put batteries on a generator? Can I run a generator with batteries? So if your client already has, already has a generator, they may be interested in adding batteries. Main goal there is decreasing fuel consumption by keeping that solar on during the day. Enphase currently offers generator integration. SolarEdge has it coming soon. But most commonly, and what you've seen most in the past and currently, is the batteries are either going to run in series or parallel to the generator. When you run them in parallel, you basically put your low demand, more steady loads on the battery, and then your high demand intermittent loads on the generator. So that way the generator can either kick on or off or rev up or down, depending how it's set up. When you put them in series, the battery is going to kick on first, and it's going to take all the loads that are set to be backed up. And then if and when it gets depleted, it will be replaced by the generator. And then the following day, sun comes back out, it's able to re-engage and recharge. So the Enphase generator integration, it allows the battery system to directly control the generator, which is a pretty cool thing. It actually replaces the automatic transfer switch, becomes quote unquote the brains of the generator. Problem though is it requires the same size of battery for backup as you would without a generator. So if your home was going to need a 40 kilowatt hour battery anyways, without a generator, it still needs a 40 kilowatt hour battery. You know, you're not getting savings there. You're not able to power off the smaller battery than you would have otherwise, because the generator here doesn't directly power the loads. It's actually only charging the batteries when needed. So really the only use case I can see for this is if you have a customer who is very adamant about a large backup or an incredibly reliable backup, but doesn't have enough of a solar array to reliably keep the batteries charged while also supplying the home during the daytime. You could have this with potentially a small generator that is there only to help charge those batteries. The SolarEdge generator integration is a little different. It's coming soon, so all of this is subject to change. But from my understanding, it's coming very soon, so a lot of this is pretty locked in. This integration will actually allow the generator to supplement the power output of the batteries, which means you can have a smaller battery, provide a more comprehensive backup. The batteries are going to handle those smaller loads, the steady loads, the ones without the peaks, while the generator is either running at a low steady RPM or it's off, depending on things like the startup time, how that generator works. And then when you have a large spike, you know, your air conditioner, your well pump, something like that kicks on, and you have that high draw load that's exceeding what your battery can do, the generator kicks in and engages to pick up that load. Use case here is somebody, especially if they already have a qualified variable speed generator, and they're looking at decreasing fuel consumption. We've been doing lots of these in Texas since last year. You know, they're looking to keep their solar producing during the day rather than having to burn gas and rack up that gas bill all day, every day for as long as it's out. You know, but they already have the generator, so they don't want to go spending all the money putting in a large battery system that can handle the backup by themselves. Think of this as your hybrid option, like a hybrid car. You've got the gas and electric working together to decrease the demand on the gas side. Another special use is EV charging. So, you know, we all know customers are shifting towards electric transportation. The ability to charge a vehicle in a prolonged outage is about to become a priority backup load. It's a complicated one right now, but it's becoming a priority. So there's a couple chargers out there, and more are being released, which will integrate with the solar and battery systems to allow what we call excess mode charging. This is the most exciting thing with these chargers for me for these backups, because they're able to essentially allow you to charge without limiting the home backup or depleting the home battery like a regular charger would if it was backed up. And so basically the way they work is the production from your solar, it first feeds the home as it always does. And then any excess will then go to your home battery. If and when that becomes full, the excess would otherwise be lost if you're off grid. There's nowhere for it to go. The house doesn't need it, the batteries are full. So instead of losing it, it just puts it in your car battery. Won't be the fastest charge in the world, but at least you have something going in there. And if you need a car in an emergency, now you're not stuck with a dead battery. So when we go through these, I think the top one on the market right now is the SolarEdge charger. Actually, it's really the only one that's actively on the market. So this EV charger integrates with the Energy Hub inverter and Energy Bank battery system. SolarEdge is now using the term SolarEdge Home to describe their whole integrated system. The charger here actually directly connects to the inverter, which is pretty cool because it removes the need for an additional breaker on the main panel. That could alone sometimes reduce or prevent you from needing a main panel upgrade, sub panel, something like that, if your breaker box is already full. It's going to allow energy to come directly from the inverter to the car battery when in excess of the needs of the home or the home battery. So rather than having to route it over through your main panel or something like that, it's coming straight off the inverter. And it can actually, if you're on grid, pull up to 40 amps from the grid, plus another 20 from the solar, so you can get some accelerated charging as well. One rumor that's coming out is they might even be looking at putting a DC charging solution that runs similar to this, which would be pretty cool. It's more efficient. You could charge faster. And these systems run at high voltage DC until the inverter anyways, and their batteries run at high voltage DC. So, it's the natural next step. So Enphase, they purchased Clipper Creek a couple months or a year ago or so now. So they're in the EV charging business. Just last weekend, while we were in Texas, they announced their Gen 1 chargers coming out, which is really just a standard EV charger. Doesn't have the ability to do excess mode yet. But I did confirm with the Enphase reps while I was there that Gen 2, which they're working on and should be out at some point, hopefully soon, will include this capability. On battery backed up systems, the ability for excess mode is critical in my opinion. Don't really have any other details of the Gen 2 charger. It's still in development. And finally, we have Span, the smart panel manufacturer. They have the Drive charger, which they're releasing. And this fills a similar function to the SolarEdge charger, but in a different way. So the charger actually connects to the panel, just like a regular charger would. But it's able to operate in excess mode because the Span panel is able to essentially turn up and down the breaker and talk to it and turn up and down the charging speeds based on things like the real-time home demand from your other backed up loads. What is your PV producing? What's your home battery state of charge? So basically, if you think about it, your PV is producing at a certain amount. If your home is demanding less than that and your battery's full, it knows the difference, and it can just turn up and down that charger to pull that difference to make your home demand match your PV production. I'm a big fan of these smart panels, definitely planning on starting to use them a lot more frequently. I think they make for kind of a smart backup where we can do a more comprehensive backup with a smaller battery. That might be a video in and of itself coming out. This charger is currently listed as coming soon, summer of 22, which we're in. So we'll see, should be out here shortly. We're going to cover very, very quickly battery sizing 101. We're going to have an entire video on this, probably the next video we do. This is a very in-depth, in my opinion, nothing can make your career quite like batteries do, because the happiest customer is the one with air conditioning when it's 100 degrees out and the power's out. But nothing can ruin your reputation faster than screwing up batteries. Because, imagine somebody spent $100,000 on a system with batteries, power goes out and they don't work because they weren't sized correctly. They're sure going to drag your reputation through the mud. So like I said, very quick overview here. There's two components to battery sizing. You have energy, kilowatt hours, which is how much energy is stored in the battery. What is its capacity? You can think of that like a fuel tank. How big is the fuel tank? And then power, which is the strength or how much energy can be utilized in real time. Think of that like horsepower of an engine. So you must have enough energy to meet the demands of your desired backup and the desired timeline. So what loads are you backing up? How much energy do they use? And how long does the battery alone have to be able to fill that backup? Are we talking overnight and then you have the solar recharging it? Do they want to be prepared for multiple days of poor weather? This is all region specific, budget specific. How prepared does this customer want to be? Also, the PV sizing plays a role here. How quickly can the PV recharge the battery the following day? If you have a huge PV system and a relatively small backup, it's more likely to be able to charge it up quickly, even in inclement weather. Versus if you have a very large battery system and a very intense backup on a small PV system, it's going to take longer to charge regardless. Now you bring in bad weather and it's not going to work that well. You also have to think about, is the PV going to be enough to supply both the house, what's backed up, and recharge the battery simultaneously? And think about not just in perfect weather. Unless you're out in the middle of the desert, most of us, our outages are caused by storms. So do the storms typically clear quickly in your area, or are they multi-day events? You really got to look at this in depth from a local perspective. And then in addition to the energy, you have to have enough power to meet the real-time demands of what you're backing up, or else the system's going to crash. If you can only put out a certain amount and an air conditioner kicks on that draws more than that, the system can't do it, it will crash. So very quick overview here. I have Enphase listed twice because power sells both the 3 and the 10. The 10 is actually just 3 of the 3s. And then SolarEdge batteries come in increments of 10. You can absolutely go above 10 by using multiple of any of these. But just to get a nice comparison here, I'm going to focus mostly on the 10 versus the 10 here. With Enphase, you've got effectively 10 kilowatt hours. SolarEdge, you've got 10 kilowatt hours. They're equal in energy capacity and how much energy is stored. Where they differ is in the power output. The Enphase battery right now, in my opinion, is actually limited by this. And some word on the street, some rumors floating out there that a new one might be upgrading this at some point soon, which I'm very eager to see. But right now, they're definitely limited by their inverter capacity in their battery. You can see you've got a peak output of 5 kilowatts, a steady output of 3.8 kilowatts. That gives you a peak current, how many amps can you back up of only 22.7, and you can only have 17 amps steady backup. Compare that to the SolarEdge 10, you've got a 7.5 kilowatt peak, 5 kilowatt steady. So that's quick math, that's about 50% larger for the same size battery. It gives you a 34 amp peak breaker size that you can back up. And 22.7 steady. So it's a more robust backup on the same size battery. Now, obviously, you still have your capacity limitations, even though you could back up larger loads off the SolarEdge battery. If you're going to deplete that 10 too quickly, you're still going to need more batteries with either one. So you really need to factor both the energy and the power. But in terms of power, I've found that the SolarEdge battery is much easier to get the comprehensive backups that people are looking at as these products stand right now. Lastly, we're going to talk about Enphase markets a sunlight only backup. And I'll preface this is purely my opinion. I do lots and lots and lots of battery work. I do not trust this product. A backup without any storage is not reliable. So, what caused the outage? If it's not perfectly sunny, how do you expect to provide steady energy for the backup? Definitely doesn't work in Florida. Again, maybe in the desert, maybe. But I don't see it. If you have even an instantaneous demand spike, so everyone wants to back up their refrigerator. Your refrigerator has a compressor. If its demand exceeds your real-time output, and even the thinnest spike, and if it exceeds it by even the smallest amount, that's a crash. Energy doesn't magically appear. What the system's producing is all you have to work with here. So at a very minimum, include the 3 kilowatt hour battery option. The cost difference is not much. Actually, the cost difference to go to a full battery with a 10 is not much. But the 3, I don't even treat it as a battery. I treat it as a capacitor. Don't plan on overnight backup with it. Don't plan on anything like that. All the 3 is there for is to give you the ability to essentially shift those peaks and meet those instantaneous spikes without causing a crash. Now, remember, despite some of the marketing that's out there and misconceptions, the sunlight only and the 3 kilowatt hour battery, really you're looking at 3 to 4 low draw 110 amp breakers, 10, 15 amp breakers. That's it. We're talking maybe a refrigerator, maybe some lights, LED lights, hopefully, some outlets, no major draws whatsoever. If you have a cloud and you don't have that 3 kilowatt-hour battery, it's not going to work. So like I said, the cost of the system is way too high for so many limitations. Go all in or don't go in at all. Get to at least a 10 kilowatt-hour battery. That's my advice. I adamantly refuse to sell these. I will not sell them. I will not sign contracts that have these on them. I do not believe in this product, and I really think has the potential to be a massive reputation killer, especially with how many misconceptions and false information's out there. You sell this to someone, they hit that outage and realize it doesn't work. That's on you. So once again, any questions? There's my contact info, my website. Always looking for new consultants to join the team, joining on the training. And if anyone has any ideas for future trainings, feel free to drop them in the comments below. Until next time.